every day. It's just been a busy week. And we went to a concert last night. Brother Mike and Felicia and I went to a concert. And on the way up to the concert, I said, oh my gosh, I haven't got a children's story to tell this morning. Brother Mike said, that's okay. That's okay. So when I went to bed that night, I had to apologise to God. I said, I'm sorry, but I don't have nothing to tell to the kids about tomorrow. And he said, give them M&Ms. This thought came to my mind, and I've got M&Ms for you all, I really do. But you can't eat them until after you eat. He said, and I said, what am I going to do with M&Ms? And he told me. He said, Valentine's is coming up soon. M&Ms, Messiah. The Messiah for M&Ms. We will have no more everlasting and eternal love than we do with Jesus. He is our Valentine. Worship. We should always come to worship and worship with our fellow Christians. And 3. The 3 should remind us of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And this is what God told me at midnight last night, that I should tell you all. So let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the love you have for us. And Lord, thank you for being there and helping us out every time we ask. Thank you for being in our lives. Thank you for your guidance, Lord. In Jesus' holy name I pray. Amen. Amen.
Oh no. Well, this morning, guess who we're going to talk to? Did anybody pick that out? Or talk about, not talk to. From our scripture reading, as we continue our little series on Old Testament prophets, you might have guessed, we're going to talk a little bit about Joseph this morning. And I know that we are all very familiar with Joseph and his story, but I really think it's important that we go back from time to time. We just revisit, make ourselves a refresher course, I guess, and just look at what these Old Testament prophets can tell us. So we're going to look at his life a little bit this morning. And we know that Joseph went down about as far as he could go into the depths of poverty and imprisonment and slavery to just rise up to the most powerful person he could possibly be next to the king in the land of Egypt. In other words, he went from suffering to success, from rags to riches, from a prison to a palace, from indignity to influence, from somebody that was forgotten to somebody that was full of fame. All of this because he stayed true with his faith in God, loving him, fearing him, and most importantly, obeying him. And as we look at Joseph's story, remember his father, Jacob. And remember that he worked for 7 years, right, for his beloved, only to get another lady. And then in order to marry his beloved Rachel, he had to work another 7 more years for their father. And after 14 years of, must have been hard labor, he was finally gets to marry his beloved Rachel, who had no children, but God heard her supplication, and then Joseph was born. I would think it'd be safe to say that Joseph was probably Jacob's favorite. That is, he showed favoritism to Joseph. Now, we do this today. Parents do this. It's probably not intentional. It's probably not on purpose, but we do show favoritism, especially when one of our children acts up and the other one's just sitting there with a nice angelic face, and then we may show favoritism. But Jacob, I'm going to get this confused before the sermon's out, I know. Jacob showed favoritism by making Joseph a coat of many colors, as we all know. And he was a dreamer. Joseph was a dreamer. He had 2 special dreams that, unfortunately, he told his brothers about. That was a mistake. He said, I dreamed that we were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaves stood upright, and all your sheaves bowed down to mine. Then he said his second dream of how the sun and the moon and the stars and all the heavenly bodies would bow down to him, implying that that they were like his father and his mother and his brothers. And obviously this did not make him real popular with his family, or his brothers rather. So one day, as his brothers were doing their daily chores, tending the flocks in the fields, Jacob said, "Joseph, go out and check on them and bring me back a report on how they're doing and what they're doing." So he started off across the fields and the meadows wearing that multicolored coat that was just flashing in the wind, and his brothers saw him coming toward him, and they came up with this plan. "Behold, the dreamer cometh. Let's kill him." That sounds like a good idea. Then one of his brothers, Reuben, stood up and said, "Well, let's not kill him. Let's just throw him in a pit." There we go with that pit thing again. It seems like every story has something to do with a pit. But just then they saw those old slave traders coming around the corner. The dust was flying high. They heard the people walking and talking. They said, "Well, there's a better idea. Let's not throw them in a pit. Let's make a profit. Let's sell them to these slave traders." So he was sold for 20 pieces of silver, carried off to Egypt. Now, can you imagine what was Joseph thinking at that time? What was going through his mind as he was being hauled away to this land that was so far from home? A land where he had no signal on a cell phone to call for help or call his father or let his brothers know where they had taken him, not that they would have helped anyway. He probably felt forsaken. I'm sure he felt forsaken, but in his heart he probably knew, or he did know, that there was one who did not forsake him, that would not forsake him. Jacob instilled that great faith in his son Joseph. He taught him. So after his brothers came back home from working in the fields, they had to tell a story. They had to tell their father something, because they knew, he would ask where Joseph was. So they came up with this great idea of saying, "Well, we'll take his coat and we'll sprinkle a little blood on it, and we'll just tell old Jacob that we just found this laying in the woods or in the fields, and evidently, a beast might have come and taken him away." So that's what they're told their father. The point here is that their sons lied to their unsuspecting father. And what happens when one lie is told, then another one is told to cover up that lie, and then another one, and another one, and another one, and pretty soon you can't remember all the lies that you've told. And as we follow these brothers, if you follow them, you see how they just get in trouble all throughout their lives. And it reminds me of a quote, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." But for old Jacob, the chickens were coming home to roost. What comes around goes around. When he was a young man, what was Jacob doing? He was lying. He was scheming. He was conniving. He was a cheating person, lying to his father to obtain the blessing that rightfully belonged to his brother. Now, let's look back at Joseph as he was in Egypt. On that probably bright and sunny morning in Pharaoh's court, it was the day of the slave trading, the slave market, and Potiphar came by, the captain of the guard, and he was looking for a slave. And he looked at the slaves from the north and the south. He looked at the slaves from the east and the west. And then he saw Joseph, who stood out among all of them as being different. He said, "That's the man I want right there." And in a few minutes, a deal was made, and he was carried home by his new master. Joseph worked hard, the kind of person he was. He worked hard to please his master. And it wasn't long before he got promoted to being an overseer. Don't you believe that God blesses those who cares for his servants? He blessed a widow who cared for Elijah. He blessed a family at Bethany that entertained Jesus. He blessed Lydia who cared for Paul and Silas. There are some people that may go around and they just bring a curse or a burden upon people, but God's person always brings a blessing, no matter what the situation is. But however, in every Eden, there's Satan. So Satan came, not in the form of a serpent, but something much worse. What did he come as? I'm not going to say it. A woman! Come on! Worse! Temptation! Joseph, this young man full of youth, probably had a nice physique, not a statue, not a mummy, the human, great appeal. He resisted. Why? What held him back? How? Was it because he was afraid of his master? No. Was it because he was afraid to lose his career as a servant? No. It's because he had a fear of God. Joseph had something that's more valuable than gold or silver, more valuable than his freedom, more valuable than his coat of many colors that was given to him by his beloved father. He had been taught to love and to fear the Lord. And he had that same attitude now as he was a servant in Egypt, as he did when he was at home with his family. It's our love for Christ. It's our fear of the Lord that keeps us on the right path. David, we know, had the same temptation, but for the moment he forgot. He paid for it. Joseph paid for it. He suffered, but he overcame. He had been faithful to God and his righteousness. But what did it get him? For the time being, he was just thrown into a cell to pay for something he didn't do. But his spirit was not broken. Now here's where the story gets a little interesting. As he's in that prison cell, who's there with him? The chief butler and the chief baker. Two interesting guys. Two servants of the king who happen to be sharing a cell or a cell block with Joseph there. And the men had told Joseph dreams they had had. A couple of dreams they had had. And he interpreted them as God gave him the wisdom to do. Now the butler said first, he said, I saw a vine with 3 branches on it, and I took the grapes on these branches and pressed them into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said, well, that's good news. That means in 3 days that you'll be released from prison and that you'll be restored to your former position. But remember me when you see Pharaoh. Then the baker told his dream, I saw that I had 3 baskets on my head. The top basket was full of food prepared for Pharaoh. Then I saw birds fly down and eat the food from the top basket. And Joseph said, well, that's not good news. That means in 3 days the king's going to cut your head off hanging on a tree and birds are going to eat your flesh. Now if it was me, I'd have said, I want that guy's dream, but I guess he didn't say that. And everything came true. In 3 days' time, the butler was released and the baker was killed. But what happened? He forgot his promise that he made to Joseph. And for 2 more years, Joseph suffered in that prison. It's important that we don't forget those who help us. Then one night the king had a couple of dreams. In one he saw 7 fat cows feeding in a meadow. Then he saw 7 lean cows come up and devour the fat ones. In the other dream he saw 7 full ears of corn, and then 7 blighted ears of corn, not corn, but grain, come up and devour the 7 good ones. And I thought my dreams were kind of funny, but those were really wild. So he called in his magicians and his wise men of the time to try to help him interpret these dreams because he was confused. He wanted to know what they meant. And after 2 years, what happened? The butler awoke. He said, I remember this man in prison with me who interpreted a couple of my dreams and told me how they would come out. And he was true. He was right. So the king immediately sent for Joseph. Joseph told him that it was God who was speaking to him through these dreams. The 7 fat cows, the 7 full ears of grain represented 7 years of plenty, and then the 7 lean cows and the 7 ears of blighted grain represented 7 years of famine that would follow. So this pleased Pharaoh to understand what his dreams meant. So he said to his servants, there's no other man who is more qualified to take on the role to oversee our country than this man who has obviously got a gift from God, making him second in command. And all through those 7 good years, Joseph worked hard. He worked hard for the people, storing up food. And in the 7 years of famine, he stood adversity well when it came, putting his trust in the Lord. In prosperity, we know that he was still a humble follower of the Lord, depending on him for guidance and help. And this is important. Sometimes when we're prosperous, sometimes when we're doing well, we forget. Sometimes it's harder to prosper than it is to be in an adverse situation. People forget. People forget what brought them there. People forget how they came to be doing so well and becoming so successful, taking credit for themselves. The prosperity didn't ruin Joseph. He remembered he was as close to God on top of the mountain as he was in the valley. Or in the valley on top of the mountain. Prosperity sometimes makes people hard. Prosperity sometimes makes people forget their friends and their loved ones. Not so with Joseph. What about Jacob? Do you think Jacob forgot? Do you think Jacob forgot his son? He must have wondered. He said, did my sons deceive me? Is there something that I don't know? Is there something they're not telling me? Is he really dead? Is he really gone? The years of plenty were soon over. Joseph had worked hard. He had gained so much popularity. He had gained so much power. Then his father, back in Canaan, was feeling the pinch of the famine. And he sent his brothers into Egypt to buy food. And after putting his brothers to several tests, he stood up and finally told them who he was. How would you have handled that situation? I don't think I would have done it like Joseph did. I think I would have got my revenge or my vengeance with Joseph. He showed this true spirit of Christianity. It was not the spirit to resist evil. It was not the spirit of prayer. It was not the spirit of charity. It was not the spirit of kindness, but it was the true spirit of Christianity. That's what we have to be. Forgiving those and loving those who despitefully and intentionally do us wrong. What did Christ say as they were killing him on that cross? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Forgive them. In that last Joseph's great life, he came to an end, and on his deathbed, he said this. He said, you won't stay in Egypt forever. One day God's going to visit you, and one day God's going to take you home to the promised land. And when he does, don't bury me here. Take me with you. Take my bones with you. Bury me in the land that God swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The point is, we're not going to remain in Egypt forever. We're not going to remain in this world of both sin and sorrow and evil and corruption. One day, our true home awaits, and God will carry us there to the promised land. We will be forever with the Lord. Look up, there's a blessing. And that word sums up all of Joseph's life. As a boy at home, he was true to God, kept God in his heart. In Pharaoh's courts, he was true to the Lord, kept the Lord in his heart. When he met his brothers, when he was the most powerful man, he was true to the Lord, showed that true Christian spirit. All along the way, he was faithful to God and righteous living. And that's what counts in our lives. One day, God looked down upon his son and said, this is my son, whom I'm well pleased. Now, do you think he said the same, maybe in a lesser manner, to Joseph? Perhaps the most Christ-like person in the Old Testament. This is my son, whom I'm well pleased. Our prayer is that we would all lift our hearts to God and say, take my life, take my heart, take my troubles, take my sins, take my stains, take my blots, take my burdens, take everything that's not making me the way I need to be. Take it. Put it in your hands. Take it and make it good. Make it useful. Make it to be used for your glory. Let us pray. Father, again, we just thank you for your word. We thank you for your blessings. Father, take our lives and mold them, mend them. Help us to serve you better each and every day. Help us to love you more each and every day. To show others that love. Father, walk with us and guide us as we leave this place. Remain in our hearts. We'll give you the honor and the glory for it all. In Christ's name we pray.